guys, and welcome back to my channel, back to Adventures with Kayla. So today what I'm doing is actually going to do the My Riding Story tag. So now what this My Riding Story tag is that it just goes through how I started riding, the horses I've had along the way, so on and so forth on that. So this could be a little bit longer of a video, but if you'd like to also do one of these videos, please tag me down below. Oh, glad to hear your riding story as well. So starting off, we always had horses when horses, like they had it from day one. My parents, we have a farm, we have cattle, and so they always had just a few horses. It's not a lot. So at first, I'm going to say my riding story as well as the horses that were also with my horse at the same time. So when I first started off, whenever I was born, my parents had two horses. They had Trigger and Sissy, and so Trigger was a Palomino racking horse, so my mom really likes racking horses, as you'll see, and then Sissy was a sorrel quarter horse. So Sissy became my horse. She was a little bit older at that point, but she's still very fast. But she's very, very sweet, and so she was my first horse, and I had her probably, and I learned to ride on her. She was great, so kind. She was sorrel with blonde maiden tail, and so I'm going to see if I can try to find a few pictures here or there of them, but I don't have a picture of her right away in here. I need to take one of her from my parents' album. But I had her probably for 8 years or so. But then at that point, she did die. Now, how she died was that we went on a really long trail ride, and then she came home and she colicked, or her tested twisted or whatever. That's really just mainly colic. So yeah, so it was very, very sad, very hard to have her put down, but that's what ended up happening. Trigger, we ended up selling him. He did, hang on, let me throw it up. Okay, so Sissy died when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and Trigger was sold. So that was our first two horses. Around that same time, we also bought a horse named Katie. Around that time we also bought a horse named Gypsy, so that my mom and dad would have a horse to ride, and then I also had a horse to ride, because at that point, you know, I didn't want to just ride double with them. I wanted to have my own horse to ride. So at that point we started having to have at least 3 horses at any given time. So mom's horses kind of went in and out. There's even more than's on my list. I can't remember all of her horses, but I'll try to get a list from her myself. But so after Sissy died, we were on the hunt for a horse. I knew I definitely would want a paint horse, just because I think they're adorable. And so my parents found me a 2-year-old black and white paint horse, which I still have today. And I got her again when I was about 8. Yeah, I'd say that's about right. So she is about 26 or 27 right now, and so she is right now retired. Let me show you a picture. Here we are. I don't know if you can see that good. But, so we are, she is retired, but she does still get ridden a lot. So, as I get into this, but yeah, I currently train horses. I will get a horse and train them up for eventing or so, and then I will sell them. And whenever I don't have a horse to ride in between horses, or let's say after I have one pretty much finished and I'm just waiting to sell, I will hop on her just for fun. I've retired her from barrel racing. I kind of got really into barrel racing with her, as well as just riding around like crazy kid, you know. So I did barrel racing with her, and so now she's a little bit arthritic, so the barrel racing not so much anymore, but now I've kind of switched gears to do dressage now anyways, and she is really excelling at dressage. So had I really gotten into that when I was young, I think she'd been a great dressage and jumping horse. She just really has a lot of uphill movement, and she absolutely loves it. So she's really only my second horse I've ever had, and I still have her, which is amazing. But I love her so much. She is the sweetest. She still comes to me, no problem. But she lives over across the street at my parents' house. So yeah, so that is Cheyenne. Her registered name is Go Lindy Bandit. At that time, my mom got her horse Gypsy that she rode for a long time. and we had Gypsy on the property for a long time until she died, and now my parents also. So back up just a little bit. Sissy had 3 babies. I don't really know what their names are. I need to write that down. 3. I know one was Candy. I don't remember the other 2, but my parents tried to break them and train them, and that just didn't work out. So they sold them. Gypsy had a baby named Shadow, and we had him and tried to train him up and get him ready, and that also didn't work out again because he was kind of aggressive. So Gypsy had a baby, Shadow, and then she tried to breed her again, and then Gypsy ended up passing away during having babies. So we had Gypsy. She died on property, and then we had Katie. We ended up having her for a little while, and then my parents sold her. So again, at this point, I've only had Sissy and Cheyenne. My parents had a lot more horses. One of my mom's friends had a horse, but then the actual person passed away, and she actually left her horse to my mom. His name was Too Tall, and he was a horse of ours that we had for a pretty long time. Also around that time, we did get Ace, a black walking horse, so my parents would have horses to ride while I rode. So Cheyenne I had from the time I was 9 up and through high school, all the way through high school and the beginning of college. After college, so as soon as I got home from college, so I went 4 years high school, 4 years college, and then I came back to the same area, like I live across the street, and I got a job at the local high school. So that is whenever I was able to buy a show horse, in my opinion. One to do like the, I was thinking Western Pleasure. He was way too fast for that, but I was able to do ranch riding and the hunt seat and hunt seat equitation. I started jumping him as well, so I kind of did a little bit of everything. He really excelled at ranch riding, and that would be Kid. Kid Got Cool. His registered name is Kid Got Cool, but his name is Kid. Let me find you a picture of him, and he was like my dream gray horse. Absolutely gorgeous. This is what he looked like when I first bought him. I bought him as a 3-year-old. He was just absolutely gorgeous. I still have him. He has now turned completely white, but I've only had him for like 5 years, so he's only 8, but he's completely white. But as you can see, he kind of started out very gray. So yeah, he's my baby. Unfortunately, a few years ago, actually about 2014, he's come down with like a little bit of navicular. So he is still able to be ridden, but anytime you ride him a lot, he starts to limp, or sometimes he'll just even limp in the field as well. As you know, navicular, it's on and off. You could spend a whole lot of money and still never get them back to where they were. So what I decided to do with him is, again, he's kind of like a backup. My plan was for him to be my backup once Cheyenne passed away, but Cheyenne's still kicking it. So right now he is ended up going to be my kids' show horse when they are outgrowing their pony, because we have a pony for them, but now I want to keep him, and he's very, very calm and very sweet, and he's going to be their horse to learn on as far as once they're ready to move up to a horse, because he's very slow, very calm, but if they want to really get into showing, then we'll look at buying another horse, because he can do definitely shows and local shows and ride, you know, once a week or something. That would not be a problem. But if you're going to try to ride him every day like I did whenever I was riding Cheyenne, he would not be able to do that, so we'd have to get another one at that point. But so I have Cheyenne and Kid. They're my babies. Still have them. I plan on keeping them until they die, so I do have them. Kid, yeah, has a navicular issue, so we may see how his medical issues go, but they are so sweet, and they are just perfect to have around the house and everything like that. So I've had this. So in 2014, so yeah, go, like fast forwarding here, so from like 0 to 8, had Sissy, 8 to say 21, Cheyenne, and those I'll have, and then at 21 I kind of got Kid, and then at about 26 years old, so about 5 years, I rode him literally every day. Like every day we showed AQHA, we showed everything. We just show, and then it's like abrupt, stopped, he's hurt. So I was like, what am I going to do now? I was finding out that with showing that he was doing well, but I would talk to the judge and be like, why didn't I do better? Like I was really, really good on the markers. He was very obedient. He would do everything I'd ask him to do. And then I'd ask him, like, well, why are we not scoring better? Now we were getting about 3rd or 4th consistently in about every class. I'm like, what is the deal? And they pretty much told me, you don't have an expensive enough horse. and that's because they're like, he was not well bred, blah blah blah, and so it just seemed like there's no chance on doing well, and I'm not going to be able to afford a $30,000 AQHA horse. It's not going to happen. I bought him for like $1,500, but now I've really trained him up, so if I sold him now, it'd be like an $8,000 horse. But even then, I don't see myself buying an $8,000 horse because they could have navicular or something like that, and then you can't even ride them. So at that point, I was like, I really could get into dressage and jumping, because then you don't have to have you don't have to have a registered horse, and it doesn't matter as much about their breeding, at least at the lower levels. I mean, once you get, you know, the Olympics, a certain breed or certain type of horse is definitely more desirable. But I started to want to do training, because also at that point, I also had, my mom was given 2 horses. My mom was given, so kind of stopping here. So my mom was given 2 horses, Fancy and Patch. Now, I started training at this point because I didn't really train Cheyenne because she was kind of already trained and she's already like set in her ways at a certain point. But when I got Kid, he was very green. And so I was looking for stuff to train and how to train, and that's whenever I kind of got into Clinton Anderson. So down under horsemanship. And I am full on down under horsemanship all the time. If I could afford to take the time to go to Texas and train under him, I sure would. So he was the first one I put through the method, all the way through the advanced. And if you'll check out my next video, which will be about what training materials and stuff I use, then I'll be talking about that. But I put him all the way through the method, and he did fantastic. So then I was like, I really would like to raise a baby and see if I can break one from the beginning, because I do think I could do it. So I'm always giving Fancy and Patch. Patch again was a walking horse. Fancy was like a thoroughbred, but like she was kind of crippled. So like she had been just completely malnourished. Like they had just not fed her at all. So once we kind of got her fed up, I tried to ride her, and she like bugs and all kinds of craziness, and she wasn't really crippled 100%, but like in the hind end, whenever I tried to trot her, walking she was fine, but as soon as I tried to trot her, you could tell something was wrong in the hind end. So that is why she was bucking and acting crazy, is because she was hurt. So got off of her, and we're like, what can we do with this horse? And I was like, she is so tall, and she's a very large horse, and so I was like, I would like to breed her. We had a friend down the road who had some like stallions in a pasture that he had never done anything with, one of which was a black and white one, and the other one was a sorrel. And I said, why don't we put him in there, put her in there with them, and see if we can get her to be bred. And she was, so we just paid like a hay bale, a round hay bale, so that she could be with him. And so here's what happened. So here's Fancy, and then here is her baby, which is Bandit, which is the first one I had. I named him Bandit. He was so cute. And here is another picture when he was first born. So Bandit, I brought all the way through the imprinting and colt starting, and I started him, and I looked around the same time. I still had Kid at that same point. And so I trained him up and used him through the method and everything, and it was just great. I absolutely enjoyed it. Now around that time, and of course I'm already married at this point, so at that point I end up having 3 horses. These are my 3 babies. So we got Cheyenne, Bandit, and Kid. But I do not have enough pasture for 3 horses at my place. And I hated to have them over at my mom and dad's house. Cheyenne at this point probably needs to be retired. Kid was still showing at this time, and so I was trying to push my time between the 2 of them. Now also at that time I was really into like seeing horses right now. I thought I might want to get me a racking horse to start showing, and I kind of started my thought of trying to save them from slaughter. So I actually went to the slaughterhouse auction and purchased Stormy. This is Stormy, and I took her all the way through the method, and she was great. And so she was going to be my racking horse that I was going to show. So I took her over to my parents' house because I couldn't keep everybody at my house. So I ended up having 4 horses at that time, which is crazy. But so after I had Stormy for a while, I would also have So, a little preface on the side here. I know it's hard to keep up with this. My parents also had Rock, which was a walking horse that they had. They also had Sugar, which is a really short quarter horse that they had for like that anyone could ride. And here's a picture of Patch. So we had a lot of horses at the time. I think we had 7 horses at one point. So we were getting horse crazy here. So some of them had to go. Absolutely, some of them had to go. So I decided to sell Stormy. Literally the day before I decided to sell Stormy, she gets caught in some barbed wire fence and gets hurt on her leg. So she gets hurt on her leg, so we nurse her back to health, and then I take her to sell her. Did not do very well on that, so that was not a very good, that was a bad learning mistake as far as trying to resell a project. So I resold her, and then Fancy, I needed to wean Bandit, from her. So once I weaned her, we decided to go ahead and sell Fancy as well, because we just didn't need another horse that couldn't be ridden. So at that point we're down to 5 and much more manageable. Then around that time, Sugar we decided to sell her because she ended up foundering a little bit. So we sold her to a little girl because this is who my husband was riding a lot whenever we were riding some together. So ended up having to sell her. So at this point we just had Patch and Rock for my parents, and then I still had my 3, Cheyenne, Kid, and Bandit. So yeah, which seems still kind of crazy. But at that point, I ended up becoming pregnant with my first kid. With my first child, I had a baby. And so then, whenever a baby happens, a lot of your stuff and your fun ends up having to stop. And the problem is with Bandit, he was a 3-year-old, so he still needed to have lots of riding because he just was not getting attention, because I couldn't ride for like 10 months because my family would not let me be pregnant and ride. And so then once I started riding again, once I'd had the baby, I had to go all with the method again because it's like you forgot everything. And he was starting to get very, very big. And I had decided that, because I do want more children and I know that my time will not be able to spend directly on him, I decided that I think I have a knack at training. And whenever I can spend time on it and not have so many horses like back and forth, then I would really enjoy to train. And so I trained him back up, and I decided to start officially my business of Mountain Creek Stables Performance Horses, which is where I'm going to hopefully take horses that are not being used or not being enjoyed by their owners, buy them, train them, and then resell them to a new home with a buyback contract. And it's been very, very rewarding. So Bandit was technically my first one on that. I guess Stormy sort of was, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I was 23, new job, new marriage, all that kind of stuff. So I decided to sell him. I know he was my baby, and so I cried hardcore about that, but I get to visit him still, and I get to talk back and forth with the owner still. So I sold him to Clemson, South Carolina, and he's now a fox hunter, and he's this lady that just absolutely adores him, and it is perfect because now I take it where I can't spend every moment with him because I have other horses, as well as I'm wanting to start doing this training thing to where that he is now like the love of someone's life, and I absolutely adore that. So he was the start of that. The next thing we decided to do was continue to do that. So now with Cheyenne and Kid, they have now been moved over to my parents' house, and they're kind of like in retirement acres in a sense. So during that time as well, Rock ended up passing away because he was an older horse, and so my mom purchased Ladybug, and it was like a roan walking horse, and she had Ladybug for probably about 10 years at this point, and she just sold her like yesterday. Which that was an interesting reason why she sold her. But yeah, so she had Ladybug, and that was her horse and everything. My dad pretty much didn't need a horse. He's like, I can ride one of yours, and that's right, because I've got Cheyenne and Kid, and they're fine, and they're over there. Okay, so now at that point, yeah, we sold Bandit around in 2015. That's whenever I technically started my business. Is in 2015, I sold Bandit, and he was the first one I sold. In 2014, my husband decided he wanted to really start riding, so we purchased a horse for him. but we bought him from the same kind of place, the Slaughterhouse Auction, and I trained him up. The only problem was that, and he was gorgeous, beautiful Palomino horse, and we named him Sweet Boy because he was sweet. But whenever we got him home, he was actually had some sort of old injury in his hind end, which caused him not to be able to jump. And then whenever I took him over there with mares, we found out he was proud gut. So he had some issues with that. So he was gorgeous, but we decided to go ahead and sell him because we had little kids, and he was getting aggressive when it came to being around mares and stuff. So he just needed to go somewhere. So we sold him. So I sold him. So I trained him up. And just kept him with geldings and sold him to a family who was only going to keep him with geldings, which was going to be fantastic. And I was selling him to a family that was not going to jump. Because again, I kind of went into the dressage jumping aspect of training. So I miss him and everything, but he will be better with that family. The next one is one that was really, really impressive. And this one I bought, I bought at the auction. And then brought it home, trained it up, and sold it. So again, that usually takes anywhere from 4 to 6 months to do that, just because I want them to have a really good foundation and really be safe for anyone and everyone who rides. So that would be Summer Breeze. And she ended up, my person I sold her to, she sent off her DNA to find out what she was made of, and she actually had Holsteiner in there, which is amazing. No wonder she excelled at dressage. So this is one of our dressage shows, and so typically with each one of these horses, I'll at least show them at least once, or do something with them. So she was fantastic. This was Summer Breeze or Breezy. So again, not registered. These horses are not registered, but I have them a show name and treat them as such, and you just really give them some love and care, and they just blossom. I've just really hit my stride now, and I kind of just know what I'm doing. Okay, so then we decided to try to get pregnant again, but then I was not having trouble, but I didn't get pregnant right away like I did with Caitlin, and so I was just getting flustered with that, so I decided to buy another one before I got pregnant, even though I thought I would just have those 3, get pregnant, and then go again. This one I bought in, December, yeah. So I bought Brandy. Her registered name was RCH Nonstop Genie. Sold her then around in February after I found out I was pregnant. So I actually got pregnant and then still had to sell her. So that was kind of difficult to sell her by not riding her. So that was a little bit of a struggle. So that was Brandy. Okay, so now during the time when I was pregnant, now this is again in 2017, I was pregnant. So during 2015, 2015 I sold all those, and then 2016 I got pregnant, and so during the whole time, whenever I was pregnant, I could not really ride. So at that point, I didn't want to buy another horse, not to, be able to do anything with. So I did not buy another horse for a while, but now we went to the auction and we bought for my now 3-year-old a pony. So we bought her the black and white little pony there. She named her Baby Horse. The baby, that was not planned. So we bought her for her as a birthday present whenever she was 3. And then a year later, here we go when we have a baby. So we did not know we had a pony that was pregnant. So we now have a little baby that we have named Tinkerbell. There's a little picture of Tinkerbell. But we have 2 little girls now, because now in October I had my 2nd child. And so now we have 2 ponies and 2 little girls. So that should work out great. Now these are almost Shetland ponies, so they won't be able to ride them forever. So eventually I'll probably will sell them as well to another little girl. But that is what we have right now. So we had at that point my 2 horses, Kid and Cheyenne, my mom's Ladybug, and my mom bought another horse, Sky, a black horse, Sky that we still have, and whenever I bought Brandy, and then we had those 2. So now after I had my baby, I was able to get back into training. So yeah, getting back into training afterwards, and I wanted to go ahead and start, buying, training, and selling again. So I bought one. This was still in this year actually. So I bought her in the very fall. So I sold her in the spring of 2017. So early on spring 2017, which is this year, I sold her. So I kind of got to get back into it at that point. So This is the first one I bought after my second baby, and this is a roan quarter horse mare. This is Scarlett O'Hara, and so we named her Scarlett. And so sold her in the spring to continue. She's helping this little family, and it's so cute. They have this little girl, and they write English, and she absolutely loves her. She's went to the best home for sure. Then after her, I went to the auction, and I was planning on buying one, and I bought this one. This is Chick's Eternal Traveler, aka Traveler. I kept him, but now at the auction, I only plan to buy one. But another one came through, and I just had to buy her. So I actually bought two at once, which I don't know if I'll do that again, but I will if I have to. And this is her, Hard Up Dixie, or just Dixie. And she was actually the better of the two, actually, once I started training them up, because Traveler was a little bit challenging. He was actually probably the most challenging horse I've ever had, actually. Even though he was gorgeous, and he was registered. He was a registered AQHA, and so now I've sold him to a great family, and they're having a great time with him. But he was a lot challenging at the beginning. Dixie was only 3 years old, and she is the sweetest horse ever, and so I've sold her to another little girl. So I'm kind of finding even my niche now to be for younger kids, because I train them with my down under horsemanship method, and it just makes them so quiet and so nice. So to families. And so my last horse now is, what we've decided is, since we're going to have Kid and Cheyenne and baby horse and Tinkerbell, so that's 4, I was taking Tinkerbell, which needs to be weaned, over to my parents' house, and unfortunately Ladybug, my mom's horse, tried to kill her. I know, so I don't know what happened there, and so my mom took Ladybug off and sold her to someone else. She said, I don't have any kind of aggressive horse there. And she'd already decided that she wanted to sell Sky, because she bought her 3 years ago and has only rode her 3 times. So she decided she wanted to sell Sky. So now Sky is in my training program. Even though we've had her for 3 years, she is in my training program, and she is actually now for sale. So if you want to check out her for sale video, I will link it up above, but she is actually for sale. And this is Sky. Because I have now retrained her, of course, and she's in training 5 to 6 days a week. Her name is Ebony Sky now, but she still gets my Sky, and she's a gated horse. I don't usually do gated horses as far as like selling, but we're doing gated dressage, and she is being really, really good at it. She's got plenty of spirit and plenty of excitement, but she is really great. She's phenomenal. So my favorite horse that I've ever had would have to be Kid. He's my favorite for sure. The horse I've had the longest would be Cheyenne, right here. And then of course the one I have for sale now is Sky. Oh, and here's a picture. I didn't show a picture, but here was a picture of my mom's horse Ladybug before, whenever we were on a trail ride. So yeah, so we've done lots of stuff for them. I now really feel like, you know, where do I go from here? I really have found my stride of training. So what I now know I do is I want to go to an auction, save a horse from slaughter and, you know, possibly dying. I want to save them from that, bring them home, and do 30 to 60 days of down under horsemanship, and then 30 to 60 days of dressage training. And then I can try to put them up for sale, and it usually takes about 2 months to sell. And then find them either a young girl or a family or maybe an amateur, someone who's just never ridden.